Mariam sat peering out of the window of her zero-energy unit home. Her curtains drew themselves automatically at exactly 8 a.m., as they were programmed to do every morning. She was in deep thought about how life could be had they maintained the old education system. In hindsight, she would have graduated from university yesterday. She may have been worried about finding a job. She sighed as her kitchen gadgets made her breakfast for her. Back in 2017, Mariam could see nothing but flames. The country was on fire. Grass burned beneath the feet of those who had grown tired. Clinics, schools, and places of worship were abandoned. The markets were empty. The country's few wealthy families had fled, having stolen from the country's treasury to sustain their lifestyle in exile. She shuddered, remembering how they were invaded by a foreign superpower for not relinquishing their precious rare earth minerals that were used in the technology industry. For 5 years, they took control of her country and led violent and anguishing drone attacks, rolling back progressive gains feminist and community movements had struggled for a century to achieve. No one was safe under the government's sophisticated surveillance technology. Thousands risked their lives and stole away in the night, traveling on dangerous routes to places fabled to have streets paved with gold. Access to safe and healthy drinking water, shelter, and work were cut off and unavailable to most people. Eventually, there was nothing left to lose. Passionate about exercising their hopes and dreams of seeing a different future, women and youth began organizing in pockets that spread across the country. Mariam and her feminist technology collective, Jua Tech, created tech cells within the most rural and urban resource-strapped areas of the country. They worked to thread together a subversive coding system developed in real time and used it to hack into their attacker's system, completely turning it against itself. Over the next 3 years, the sentient being was configured with an infrastructure of emotional intelligence and founded on the philosophy of Ubuntu, the idea that our humanity is bound up in each other. Mariam and her friends would create and memorize certain gestures, verbal and tonal expressions from their social interactions and make these expressions into digital codes. They sought to completely replace the ruling power structure of dominance, dishonor, destruction, and death with a tech-enabled structure of love, compassion, harmony, health, and happiness. Building a Wi-Fi facility from electronic waste, the tech collective patched into an expansive virtual network on AfriFemNet to expand the depth and reach of the sentient being. The country's energy grew and influenced more people to transmute their emotional consciousness from competition and isolation to the virtues of goodness, kindness, and togetherness. Her country's new reality was created through the energy and emotion of the brave, beautiful movement led by women and young people. The sentient being replaced the old education system by integrating knowledge with technology so that it was available everywhere and at all times to all people. Learning was now intuitive, continuous, and individualized, but for the collective good. The sentient technology radically remixed human relationships. The capacity of humans to learn, adapt, communicate, and create new forms of imagination, much like how the internet did in the 1990s. The sentient technology became the only real form of government needed, as it guaranteed accountability. The need for laws had been absolved. There was no more use for traditional power structures and their discriminatory and exclusionary policy. As the connections amplified outside the country, they led to a critical questioning globally about the significance and functionality of government and, finally, a push towards self-governance began. The whole world was now taking their cues from the African continent and integrating holistic wellness for all life forms. International definitions of work had been challenged in earlier decades by African feminist academics. Now, with the arrival of sentient technology, there was a world that recognized the effort of everyone's labor. People engaged in work that was meaningful and made them happy. Previously, manual tasks were fully automated, lifting the burden of most care work from women. The care labor that remained was shared, and everyone helped to look after each other with the spirit of togetherness. Money was abolished since the sentient technology allowed all communities and traders to connect through its system. Bartering and exchange of services became the equivalent of buying and selling. Everyone received what they needed to ensure constant wellness. With sentient technology, there were now ways for human beings to live without negatively impacting the earth. The sentient being enabled a system for extracting water from the atmosphere that helped preserve all water bodies while still making it available to all without discrimination. Mariam was part of an urban organic farming collective that was working with the earth to produce new variations of fruit, vegetables, and grains for sustenance. Land was now intuitive and self-protecting. It was owned and governed collectively, and all land on Earth and in other planets was accessible to human beings. Sentient technology enabled the development of new social structures. Because everyone was allowed to choose their families, there was no real notion of dependency. Family became a concept that extended beyond genetic markers, and Mariam's own family included close friends she connected with through her technology work and other members of her organic farming collective. These new forms of social groupings and norms initially attracted resistance from traditional leaders and conservative religious organizations who began to organize against the dismantling of patriarchal roles. They objected to the sentient technology, warning of hellfire and damnation. The sentient technology did not comprehend violence and destruction, and therefore these violent sentiments had no opportunity to grow. If it wasn't for the sentient being, Mariam's chosen mother would have died. She had been diagnosed with an advanced stage of lung cancer during the height of the drone attacks. At that time, no quality healthcare options were available since most public services in the country had been destroyed. A group of Ugandan feminist biomedical engineers linked to Mariam through AfriFemNet told her about a cell regeneration microchip that would help her mother to heal. The chip would also regulate her medication treatment and monitor her health daily. This was the power of sentient technology. It could speak to each person's direct condition and assist one to live their best life. Women now fully in charge of their reproductive decision-making could use the chip to monitor their hormones, menstruation cycle, capacity to get pregnant or not, and overall wellness. Mariam looked out of her window at the weather. Today she was harvesting beans from her small garden. Breathing in, she felt that it was, like all days, a world full of possibility.